I don't normally cover cases more than once, but I'm going to do a full episode of someone who appeared on my most recent list episode. He was the last story on the list, and while looking up info for the episode, I realized there was so much more detail about the case and I was interested in learning more about it. So here we go. The Daniels family lived in Santa Claus, Georgia, and were a family that gave back to the community. Kim Daniels had not only been a foster child herself, but when she was struggling in her younger years, her own children were put in the system while she struggled to put her life back together. Once that was done, she got her kids back and became one of the local social services' best foster homes for children in need of a temporary home. It was that selflessness that would bring a young man into their home who would go on to destroy the family and turn Santa Claus from a merry holiday-themed town into a place of terror. This is Monsters. Jerry Heidler was born on June 9, 1977 in Alma, Georgia, to George and Latrell Heidler. Jerry was born with a heart defect that was discovered when he was 4 years old, and though he underwent a successful surgery to correct it, his mother often used it as a reason she didn't want to punish him for acting up. Latrell had been married for a few months when she was 15 years old and had a child with that man, but they divorced and the child remained with their father. She married George when she was 18, and they would go on to have 4 children. George Jr., who went by Butch, Lisa, Steve, and Jerry was the youngest. When Jerry was 8, his father left the family and moved to Florida. The following year, Latrell married a man named Lawton Mosley, who was an abusive alcoholic and regularly beat the kids. He once hit Steve with a belt buckle, leaving him with a large scar. Despite the adult being a child abuser, Steve was eventually sent to a juvenile facility for threatening to beat Lawton with a table leg. So a child threatening an adult got him locked up, but the adult beating the child was just fine. Seems about right. Not long after Lawton entered their lives, Butch was also sent to a hospital for alcoholism. It was safe to say the household was not doing well, and that's why a neighbor reported them to the Georgia Department of Family and Child Services, or the DFCS. The social worker that visited the home reported that the conditions were quote-unquote deplorable and that there was very little food in the house. That didn't seem to trigger any action by DFCS, and eventually Steve was released from the juvenile facility. Back at home, his behavior was even worse, attacking both Lawton and Latrell with knives and giving his siblings serious beatings. Eventually, Steve admitted to doing drugs and was sent to live with an aunt. Latrell told a social worker that she believed that Steve was influencing Jerry to act up as well. At school, it said they had to put a screen up around him so he couldn't disrupt the other students. They eventually took it down, believing Steve's departure was making Jerry's behavior improve, but the chaos by everyone, compounded by Latrell's reluctance to punish him, is most likely what caused Jerry's behavioral issues. Things were made worse as Latrell would take to moving from one county to another anytime someone reported her to DFCS in order to disrupt their investigations. Not long after Lawton and Latrell got married, they also had a child together, a daughter named Joanna. When Jerry was 11 years old, he broke into a neighbor's trailer and stole some coins and some soda, or fizzy drinks if you're outside of the U.S. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of criminal trespass and 1 count of burglary and was sentenced to a year of probation. The judge also ordered that Jerry be placed in the custody of family members. He moved in with his aunt and uncle and seemed to do a little better there, but his mother made the situation unmanageable. She would regularly stop by and harass the family, and eventually his aunt and uncle dropped him off at the local sheriff's station and left. A social worker picked him up, and without anywhere for him to go, he was sent back to live with his mother and stepfather. Fortunately, a few days later, a temporary foster home became available, and Jerry was sent to live with the Johnsons. Only a week later, he was sent to a permanent foster home with the Boatwright family. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for Mrs. Boatwright to report to the social worker that she didn't think Jerry was a good fit. Jerry went back to the Johnson house and was there for about a month when he was reportedly trying to cast spells on the other two foster kids who lived there. Once again, the social worker was called and asked to remove Jerry from their care, and the boy was sent back to his mother and stepfather. It would soon be discovered that Luttrell claimed that she practiced voodoo, but only used white magic. Jerry would later tell a psychologist that his family believed in curses, chants, potions, and powders, and that his mother had taught him about black magic. A few weeks after returning to his family home, a neighbor called the police to report Jerry was outside screaming about killing himself and his family. At another court hearing, the judge ordered that Jerry not be allowed to return to his mother under any circumstances. The Boatwrights relented and took him back, and he was placed into a special school for children with social and emotional issues. His behavior improved mildly, but he spent most of his time talking to imaginary friends along with an imaginary pet mouse. Despite everyone else's effort to help Jerry, Luttrell was dead set on getting him back. She hired a lawyer who argued that his state custody was only a condition of his probation, and she won. Jerry was sent back to live with his mother and stepfather, and Luttrell immediately packed up and moved the family 45 minutes away to Denton, Georgia. Side note, this is the first time I've ever looked up a place on Google Maps and had it be an almost perfect circle. That was about the time Jerry started cutting himself. A few months later, he tied a rope to a tree branch and tried to take his own life, but Luttrell found him just after he had kicked the bucket out from under his feet. He called out to her to cut him down, and she did. It was only a few days later that Jerry tried to smother and then strangle his 2-year-old half-sister, but again Luttrell intervened. It's reported that his mother quote-unquote scolded him, and it doesn't seem like she reported any of his actions. He did have a regular appointment with a counselor, and it was there that he confessed to his suicide attempt. He was admitted to a psychiatric facility in Savannah, where he stayed for about 2 months. After being prescribed medication, his behavior improved enough where he was allowed to go home for 2 days to visit family. At the end of the 2 days, Luttrell called the hospital and told them he wasn't coming back. When he returned to school, staff reported that he talked about committing a shooting at the school, describing exactly where a neighbor kept a gun. They also complained that he was destroying furniture and talking about drowning a puppy. The principal had him taken to a youth clinic where he spoke with a counselor. When Luttrell picked him up, she was instructed to take him back to the psychiatric facility, but she didn't. She told authorities she didn't think he needed to be there. 3 months later, he was reported for more threats of killing himself, his family, and animals, and he admitted to having auditory and visual hallucinations. When he was sent to the youth clinic again, Luttrell said she didn't think he was acting strange and again refused any of the suggestions made by the counselor. You probably won't be surprised to learn that Jerry's behavior only got worse. In one instance, his older brother Butch threw a rock at him, so Jerry went into the house, grabbed a .22 caliber rifle, ran back out and started shooting at him. He continually missed as Butch ran away. It's reported that Luttrell simply came outside and told Jerry to knock it off. He had altercations with children at school, once strangling a kindergartner and other times threatening students with a knife. Luttrell was unwilling to cooperate with DFCS, claiming Jerry was just fine, but her denial wouldn't make the real issues go away. DFCS eventually attempted to get a court order to take Jerry away from his mother, and though the judge agreed that Luttrell had failed to provide him with proper care, he claimed that it was in the boy's best interest to remain with her. He put a number of conditions in place that included requiring Jerry to attend school every day, that he participate in court-ordered mental health treatment, and that he submit to any psychological testing ordered by the mental health professionals. That ruling was made at the end of 1989, and Jerry would only make it to May before he was involuntarily committed. After refusing to go to school on May 6th, he destroyed the television and started ranting about killing his teachers. When he was admitted to the hospital in Savannah, the reasons that were listed were homicidal, suicidal, and needs detox. The last one was for alcoholism. At the age of 13, Jerry had been arrested, had attempted to kill himself, had attempted to kill multiple other people, including 2 siblings, had been in psychiatric facilities, and now was in another one needing to detox from alcohol. 11 days later, Jerry was released into the care of his mother. Once back home, Jerry took up smoking and replaced alcohol with soda, specifically Mountain Dew. Now, if you live outside of the US, Mountain Dew is not as prevalent as a lot of the ingredients used to make it are banned in other countries. But the US prioritizes corporate profit over human life, so it's a big seller there. And as far as the mainstream sodas go, it has the highest caffeine content. I know there are other sodas that have more caffeine like Jolt or Balls, so that's why I said mainstream, especially since some of those other brands weren't around in 1990. A regular Mountain Dew has 54 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce can, which is 355 milliliters. And yes, the product in the US has the amount of drink in the can in imperial measurements, but the nutrition facts like the amount of sugar and caffeine in the metric system, because why not? Now, I'm not just giving a TED talk about Mountain Dew here. The point of all of this is because the caffeine in the Mountain Dew and the nicotine in the cigarettes only made Jerry's mental health worse and caused him to be even more jittery. And I'm sure the load of sugar in the radioactive colored soda didn't help either. That became Jerry's life for the next few years, including when he dropped out of school at 16. After that, he started spending more time with his older brothers who were mainly committing crime, but the older he got, the less DFCS was concerned about his well-being. He spent most of his time hanging out with his older brother Steve, stealing cars and doing drugs. That didn't mean that Luttrell was out of DFCS's radar, though. Their attention eventually shifted to Jerry's younger half-sister, Joanna. In 1995, Joanna was removed from Luttrell's custody and placed with a foster family in the small town of Santa Claus, about an hour north of Alma. Kimberly Lamb, who went by Kim, was born on February 25, 1964 in Metter, Georgia, another city that's an almost perfect circle despite a thing at the bottom. Is this a Georgia thing? Because I've never seen it before, but in this area there's Pulaski, Register, Stillmore, Higston, and Oak Park with this crazy sail on top. Why are all these cities in Georgia all circles? Let me know in the comments if you know. Anyway, when Kim was 3 years old, her father tried to steal some chickens so he could feed the family and was shot and killed. To make matters worse, her mother abandoned her and her siblings shortly after, leaving the kids to be taken in by the state. In the process, Kim lost contact with her siblings as she was shuffled around the foster system. The first year, she was in 17 different foster homes, and that number would grow to 52 by the time she was finally placed in a permanent home when she was 12. She didn't make it easy on her foster family and eventually dropped out of school in favor of a life of drugs. She got married when she was 21 and had a daughter, but it wasn't long before her husband divorced her and got full custody of their child. 2 years later, she met another man and went on to have another daughter, Amber, in 1986, followed by twins, a boy named Bryant and a girl named Brooke 3 years later. The father left when the twins were born, and DFCS took all 3 of her children away within the year. By 1992, Kim was homeless and broke, and in a last-ditch attempt to turn her life around, she went to the Mount Vernon Pentecostal Church in search of help. The church was known as a haven for people who were down on their luck, and if that described anybody, it was definitely Kim. Kim was taken in by the church's reverend and his wife, and with a community of support, she was able to pull her life back together. She was able to get a small apartment with housing assistance, and in exchange for help from the church and its members, she worked cleaning the church. She finally got a job working at a factory that made plastic containers. Slowly but surely, she climbed her way back out of a hole of depression and trauma. With a stable income, a place to live, and a system clean of drugs, Kim was able to go to court and start the process of getting her children back. That would start with her oldest child, Amber, having visitation, then move to overnight stays, then to full-time if things went well. And they did. 3 months later, Kim was back in court requesting to have her twins returned, and the request was granted. DFCS made regular visits, always finding her home clean, the children well cared for, and Kim never failed a drug test. Once she had all 3 children back, she put her focus all on them. She continued to work, and there she would get asked out, but she always said no. She wasn't interested in messing up her life getting into another relationship with some random guy. It wasn't until she saw the local postal carrier, Danny Daniels, that she thought she might be interested in going on a date. Danny Daniels was born on May 21, 1950 in Tifton, Georgia, which isn't even close to being a perfect circle. His father was the agriculture commissioner of Toombs County, and when he died, he left a piece of property in Santa Claus to his son. Danny had been married twice before, and during his second marriage, he and his wife adopted a girl named Jessica. When they divorced, Danny got full custody of Jessica, and at the time he met Kim, she was 11 years old. When Kim finally talked to Danny, they agreed to some casual dates without telling the children to save them from the disappointment if it didn't work out. It wasn't long before Kim invited Danny to attend a church with her, and since Danny was used to a more reserved Methodist church, the lively Pentecostal service was something he seemed to enjoy. He was soon baptized, and he and Kim were officially a couple. The families were introduced to each other, and it was like it was meant to be. Danny had built a house on the property he had inherited, and it had everything for a large family. 4 bedrooms, a garden, a pond, and several acres where the kids could run and play. Danny and Kim got married on December 3, 1992 in their small church. Danny legally adopted Amber, Brooke, and Bryant, and they were all united under the same roof. Kim felt like she had been blessed and wanted to repay the world, so she told Danny that she wanted to apply to be a foster family. By the fall of 1995, Danny and Kim were approved to foster, and they were quickly considered one of DFCS's best foster families. Kim had been in the system and knew better than anyone what the children needed. Children who have suffered trauma are generally acting out because they are looking for some kind of control over their own life, and Kim knew how to deal with that without making it a fight for power. Near the end of the year, a social worker contacted Kim and told her they had a 10-year-old girl that needed a temporary home. That girl was Joanna Mosley, the daughter of Lawton and Latrell Mosley. Joanna adjusted to living with the Daniels as well, and she liked them enough to call them Mom and Dad, but eventually she missed her family and asked if she could visit her mother. Despite it being against the rules, Kim sympathized with the girl and agreed to drive her down to Alma for the visit. Those started happening regularly, and on one of those visits, Kim met Joanna's half-brother, Jerry, though he told Kim his name was Scott Taylor. Joanna lived with the Danielses for 12 weeks until social workers found Latrell's home just barely sufficient for the child to return to. Around that time, Kim and Danny offered Jerry a place to stay as, though he wasn't a foster child, he was still in need of some stability. While staying with them, Jerry didn't seem to improve his social interactions much, but he did seem to open up more when Jessica was around. Through 1996, Danny noticed the interest Jerry had taken in his daughter, but before he could become too concerned, Jerry started dating a young woman named Maria Spivey. The time period they dated saw Jerry float around between his mother's house, his sister's house, friends' houses, and the Daniels' home. It wasn't long before Maria became pregnant, and she eventually gave birth to a son named Joshua. People who knew Jerry said he was good with kids. He had friends and family members who let him babysit their children, but that didn't seem to translate to being a father. Maria ended up moving in with her parents, and Jerry would visit frequently, but was more of a visitor than a father. Jerry's attention turned back to Jessica, and though the young girl thought he was nice, she knew he had problems and wasn't going to start a relationship with him. It didn't stop Jerry from developing an obsession with her, though. During the times he was staying somewhere else, he would call the Daniels' house at all times, no matter how inappropriate. He was also calling over and over, letting the phone ring 20 times before hanging up and immediately redialing. Danny decided it was time to let Jerry know that his pursuit of Jessica was not appropriate and he was no longer welcome to come by the house. They were trying to give Jerry somewhere stable to get himself clean, but he made no effort to stop drinking or doing drugs, so the Danielses didn't think it was necessary for him to be there. After Danny finished work one day, he went to the home of Maria's parents where Jerry was staying and let him know he was to stay away from his house. Jerry seemed to be just as emotionless about the news as he always was, but Luttrell ended up getting her broken car roadworthy specifically to drive up to Santa Claus and do donuts on the front yard of the Daniels house. A strange way to pay them back for all the help they had given to the very children she was unable to take care of. Danny had returned from work and found the vandalism on his front lawn. He expected a reaction from Jerry's mother, as she was known to be a vindictive person, but having her do donuts on his lawn was not a square on his bingo card. He and a friend raked out the yard, and from there both families seemed to have moved on. The Danielses continued to foster children, and over the course of 1997 they would welcome 3 more foster children into their home. Jerry also seemed to move on, ceasing his relentless calls to the Daniels home and even leaving them alone when he saw them in public. Maria became pregnant again at the beginning of 1997, and there were questions of whether or not Jerry was the actual father, as the time he spent with her was pretty limited. When she told him the baby was his, he didn't question it, but that didn't mean Jerry's behavior had changed. He continued to float from one house to another, drinking, doing drugs, and playing video games. He also got arrested multiple times during 1997. In May, he broke into a pawn shop where he stole 3 Nintendo games, a number of pocket knives, and 3 porcelain dolls. He was arrested soon after leaving the shop. In October, he was arrested for drunk driving. He had borrowed a car from a friend, and though he didn't have a driver's license, his older brothers had taught him how to drive. A month later, he was arrested for stealing a Jeep Cherokee and a Kawasaki 4-wheeler. He was released after 2 days in jail, but that crime violated his probation from the other crimes, and a warrant was eventually issued from his arrest, but he would not be picked up before he could do even more damage. On November 29th, Jerry went to Maria's house where he found her on the couch complaining of not feeling well. Her mother was also there, and when she expressed her concern about Maria and the baby, Jerry suggested they take her to the hospital. Maria was admitted to the Bacon County Hospital where staff discovered the baby had an irregular heartbeat. People say that Jerry was sure that the baby was his at that point and that they had inherited his heart condition. Eventually, the heart monitor stopped and medical staff rushed in to take Maria to an emergency room. A baby boy was born shortly after, and he managed to survive for an hour before passing away. Jerry immediately left the hospital and drank himself into a stupor. A funeral was held for the baby on December 2nd, 1997, and Jerry, though usually completely devoid of emotion, cried the whole time. The following day, Jerry was at Maria's house when he asked her to drive him to his mother's house. She was aware that the baby had died, but Jerry had stayed away from her since it happened. For the first time, she was able to ask him about the baby, and since Luttrell wasn't really someone who cared about other people's feelings, she bombarded him with questions, and the onslaught would cause his inner rage to boil over. December 3rd was a Wednesday, and the Danielses went about their normal routine. Danny left early for work, and shortly after, Kim got up and got the older kids off to school. 16-year-old Jessica was in high school. 11-year-old Amber and the twins Brooke and Bryant, plus one of the foster children Amanda, who were all 8, went to elementary school. After they were all off to school, Kim spent the day taking care of the 2 remaining foster children in her care, 4-year-old Corey and infant Gabrielle. By that evening, everyone was back home, had eaten dinner, and went to bed. By then, Jerry had gotten into another fight with his mother and headed to a friend's house to drink and play pool. There, the normally quiet Jerry ranted the entire time about being at the hospital, hearing the heart monitor beep, or how tiny his son's coffin was. He was worked up into a frenzy, and the alcohol was only making it worse. Eventually, his friend went to sleep, and Jerry and another person played pool for another couple hours, still sucking down beers. At about 11 p.m., the other guy left and Jerry grabbed the keys to his friend's van, as well as a small box that contained $4 bills, the friend's social security check, a gold chain, and some papers, and left the house. Outside, he climbed into the van and started driving north. In Santa Claus, Jerry drove the van to the end of Dasher Lane where he turned the headlights off before getting to the Daniels' house. He hopped out of the driver's seat, downed the rest of his beer, and tossed the can on the ground. Then he finished his cigarette and tossed the butt on the ground too. The Daniels' 2 dogs were outside, curled up by the house, but they ignored Jerry, who they were familiar with. Jerry found a stepladder that was outside and set it against the house near the bathroom window. Then he smoked another cigarette and threw that butt on the ground outside the window. He climbed up the ladder, pushed the window open, and climbed inside the house. He went to the dining room, which was actually a sort of sunroom that had a sliding door between it and the rest of the house. There he smoked more cigarettes, putting one of them out on the carpet. He made his way down the hall toward Danny and Kim's room, where just outside was a gun cabinet. Jerry took a Remington 1100 shotgun out of the cabinet and loaded it. Then he entered the parents' bedroom and shot Danny and Kim each once. He then went into the bedroom where 8-year-old Bryant and 4-year-old Corey slept in bunk beds. Corey had been woken up by the first 2 shots and hid in the closet. Bryant either didn't wake up or was too scared to move as Jerry pointed the shotgun right at his head and squeezed the trigger. Jessica had been woken up by the first 2 shots as well and had run into the same bathroom that Jerry had come into the house through. It's unclear why she ran there, but she was likely confused and disoriented. Soon after reloading the shotgun, Jerry walked that way down the hall where Jessica saw him and asked what he was doing. Realizing she was in danger, Jessica ran to her parents' bedroom, but Jerry followed her, and once inside, he pointed the shotgun at the back of her head and fired. There, Jerry realized that Danny had not been killed by the first shot to the chest, so he shot him a few more times to ensure he didn't survive. Jerry claimed later that hearing 8-year-old Brooke call out his name made him snap out of a trance-like state he had been in during the murders. That didn't mean he was done committing crime, though. From there, Jerry took Brooke and Amanda, who were both 8, and 11-year-old Amber, and ushered them out of the house. He told them that someone was in the house, not mentioning that it was him. He was in the house. He loaded the girls into the van and left the property. The dogs had been scared by the shotgun blasts and had run out into the tall grass behind the house. As they drove away, Jerry told the girls that he was taking them to safety, that Danny and Kim had already left and would meet them there. After a while, Jerry confessed to the girls that he had lied, admitting, quote, "I kidnapped you." Jerry stopped the van on the bridge that crossed the Altamaha River, where he unloaded the shotgun and dropped it into the waters below. From there, he drove to an isolated road and parked the van. While parked, he took one of the girls into the back of the van and sexually assaulted her. The identity of which girl was violated was not released. He was about to move on to another girl when he suddenly changed his mind, ordered the girls to get out of the van, and drove away. He continued south to Alma and went to his mother's house where he played video games for a while before crashing on the couch. It was as if he hadn't just murdered 4 people, kidnapped 3 children, and sexually assaulted one of them. Back on that dark road, Amber, Brooke, and Amanda were freezing in just their pajamas with bare feet. Despite being so young, they knew their only hope was to find help, so they began walking down the road until they saw lights. Those lights were coming from a little trailer home, and they knocked on the door. The couple living there opened the door to see 3 children standing in the cold and immediately brought them inside and put a big coat around them. They dialed 911 and reported the discovery of the 3 stranded girls. An Alma police officer quickly arrived and interviewed the girls, who told them they had been kidnapped, but there was some initial confusion as they still only knew Jerry as Scott Taylor. They were able to tell the officer where they had lived and that they had heard loud sounds before they had been taken. It was about 5 a.m. when the Toombs County Sheriff's Office was alerted to the situation, and when a deputy arrived at the house, he saw the lights were on and the front door was ajar. With his weapon drawn, he carefully entered the house and announced his presence, only to be confronted by the sound of a crying child. The deputy found Corey in one of the bedrooms, hysterical from the attack and having been abandoned in the house with the baby Gabrielle and 4 dead bodies. Corey told the deputy, quote, "Mama and Daddy are dead. Brother Guy shot them all." He was referring to Danny's best friend, Guy Aaron, who was also a member of the Pentecostal church. Pentecostals refer to each other in the church as brother and sister, so Brother Danny, Sister Kim, and Brother Guy. Corey was young and it was dark, and he had mistaken Jerry for Guy, which likely added a little more confusion to who the attacker was, on top of having been given the name Scott Taylor. The deputy continued clearing the house, going into the boys' room first, finding Bryant dead on the top bunk. When he made it to the master bedroom, he heard a radio playing that ended up being the alarm on a clock radio, which had been set for Danny to get up for work. In the room were the bodies of Danny, Kim, and Jessica, and that's where the deputy found little Gabrielle screaming at the top of her lungs. Back in Alma, not long after the crime scene in Santa Claus had been discovered, Jerry Johnson, the friend who Jerry had been with the evening prior, called the police to report his van stolen. Fortunately, he knew Jerry by his real name, and he told the officer that he thought he was the most likely suspect. When the name Scott Taylor didn't produce any leads, an officer started thinking the van theft might be connected to the kidnapping and searched for Jerry Heidler, which turned out to be a gold mine. A few hours later, an agent from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation arrived in Alma to interview the girls. By then, investigators had gathered more information and come up with photos of some of the people who might be involved in the case. Within those photos was a picture of Jerry, and when Amanda saw it, she told the GBI agent that it was Scott. The agent confirmed that he was the man who had taken her from her house, and she said yes. Then he held the picture up to the camera so her choice would be documented on the recording. Both Brooke and Amber picked the same picture, but Amber added even more detail. She described the pattern on the fabric seats in the van and even described what the shotgun shells looked like. Back at the house in Santa Claus, the bodies were removed and evidence was collected. They collected the beer can and cigarette butts that had Jerry's DNA on them. They dusted for prints, which would likely be found in the house since Jerry had been there many times, but finding prints on the gun cabinet or shell casings would stand out amongst prints in other common areas. One of the details discovered by investigators was that the Danielses had an alarm system installed in their house 3 weeks prior to the murders. The system included sensors on all of the doors and windows, but there was a problem with it and it hadn't been working. Calling the security company to have them fix it was on Kim's to-do list, but with Christmas coming up and a house full of kids, she hadn't had time to get it done. If the system had been working, it would have gone off when Jerry opened the bathroom window and the murder would likely have not happened. Not to blame Kim, nobody could have expected Jerry was going to murder them. Once the various agencies had the evidence they needed that showed Jerry was a very strong suspect, they went to his mother's house and drove by just to get a sense of the property. As they circled the block and drove by the house a second time, Jerry had just stepped out of the house and was walking toward the van. Not only had he just gone home and went to sleep, he also kept the stolen van with him and parked it at his mother's house. Once Jerry saw the police cruiser driving by, he froze. Then he turned and ran back into the house. The agents got out of the car and knocked on the door, which was answered by Steve, Jerry's older brother. He told the agents that Jerry wasn't home, but having witnessed him run into the house, they knew that wasn't true, and it also gave them probable cause to enter the house. They searched the house but didn't find him. By then, other officers had arrived, and one of them noticed a board on the outside of the house looked like it had been recently removed and replaced. GBI agents and police officers yanked Jerry out from under the house and placed him under arrest. Steve was also arrested and charged with interfering with a police investigation. Before we finish this episode, I just want to remind you that we're trying to hit 1 million subscribers this year, so before you go, take a minute to subscribe to the channel. Even better, tell someone else about the channel so they can subscribe as well. Then make sure you both turn on notifications so you'll always know when a new episode airs. You can also support the channel by checking out our merch at thisismonsters.com. A link is in the description. Your support is appreciated. When Jerry was interviewed, he immediately admitted to killing Danny, Kim, Jessica, and Bryant. He said he went berserk, but he said he couldn't remember exactly what happened in the house during that time. He told the investigators that he didn't remember anything until Brooke called out his name in the hallway. It was a short interview and they confirmed the 4 victims with him and ended it. Of course, when Jerry's mother Luttrell learned of the murder, she went straight into denial mode. Even when Jerry confessed to her that he had committed the murders, she claimed that the police had brainwashed him into confessing. She concocted a story that Jerry and 3 other people had gone to the Daniels' house to rob them, but the others started killing the family, so Jerry took the 3 girls and drove them away to save them. It was as delusional as they come. There were only one set of footprints on the property that evening, Jerry's. There was only one person's DNA at the scene, Jerry's. Oh, and there were multiple people who witnessed that only one person was there. Sure, they were children, but having all their stories be the same despite them having been found in different places was no coincidence. And then the sexual assault kind of made the idea that Jerry was trying to save the girls hard to swallow. Then you top that off with Jerry immediately confessing. The very denial that had led to Jerry becoming the monster he was continued even after he had committed the crimes of a monster. In the lead-up to his trial, Jerry was shuffled from the Toombs County Jail to a psychiatric facility in Savannah. Multiple doctors reported that he should not be found guilty by reason of insanity, though one doctor reported that if found guilty, he should be considered mentally ill. Unfortunately, jail staff started ignoring Jerry, brushing him off as weird, but that left him alone to study what was going on around him. He watched the guards and took mental note of behaviors and patterns. He had somehow gotten a small blade and started using it to saw through 2 bars on the window to his cell. Jail staff say they have no idea where the blade could have come from. He would saw on the bars for hours every night, covering the cut each day with a mix of toothpaste and cigarette ash. It took about a month, but he was finally able to cut through 2 bars, spin them to the sides, and then cut through the plexiglass window. He was skinny enough that it was all the room he needed to get out. He had memorized the roll call routines and the times that a guard patrolled outside. He knew that an outside patrol wouldn't happen again for another 2.5 hours, and he was able to cut the chain link fence enough to make a hole big enough to squeeze through in only 2 hours. Jerry's empty cell with bent bars was noticed at the 5 a.m. bed check. Outside, other guards found the hole in the fence and a manhunt was started. Jerry had put a lot of effort into planning his escape, but he failed to make any plan for what he would do after he was out. He walked along rail tracks and through thick woods before being spotted on a highway about 12 hours after he broke out. He was rearrested and returned to the jail, this time under 24-hour surveillance. Jerry's trial began on August 23, 1990, and he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense argued that Jerry did not know what he was doing at the time of the murders, but much of the evidence proved otherwise. He had enough forethought to steal a vehicle and an almost 1-hour drive to contemplate what he was going to do. Evidence also showed that he was in the house for a period of time before the murder, smoking and thinking about what he was going to do. Of course, the escape attempt didn't help either. The jury only took 20 minutes to find him guilty on 11 counts, including 4 counts of murder, multiple counts of kidnap, and 1 count of sexual assault. Jerry Heidler was given 4 death sentences and 2 life sentences plus 110 years for the 11 charges, and when he broke down into tears at the sentence, it was the first time he had ever shown emotion in the case. Not because he had destroyed so many other lives, but because he had destroyed his own. After the murders, Brooke and Amber went to live with Danny's sister Debbie, and the 3 foster children went to live with the Driggers, who had once fostered Kim, and she considered them grandparents to her own children. Jerry went through the lengthy appeals process that comes with a death sentence and has recently exhausted his final appeal. His ability to be executed has been confirmed, and we're now just waiting for it to be scheduled. Jerry will be put to death, the same sentence he gave to Danny, Kim, Jessica, and Bryant. And worse, he left multiple children scarred for life by the monstrous actions he committed against them. Thanks for watching This Is Monsters. New episodes are uploaded twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. There are occasional bonus episodes covering unsolved cases and criminal history. If you have a suggestion for a case you think I should cover, leave it in the comments. You can always follow the channel on Instagram at thisis_monsters and purchase merch at thisismonsters.com. Thanks so much, and be safe.